Good morning, guys. Today, Maya Angelou reminds us of one of our greatest powers, and it's something we can always do anywhere we are, and it is the power to lift people up. So let's try this today. Let's look at our day as it begins. Let's think ahead and envision the people that we may interact with today in our normal course of things. And let's try to really apply the strategy of lifting people up. How do we do this? One thing we have to remember is that our words are so powerful. As Maya Angelou reminds us, all you have to do is show courtesy in your speech. When you talk to someone in a way that is respectful, courteous, and shows belief in them and their true greatness, that's what they start to believe, and that's what enriches you as being that. So the way we want to be treated is the way we should treat others. Let's try that today. Have a great day, everyone.
I think something that happens is you have to surround yourself by peers in a space too who understand you and don't see you as competition. And that's really hard, and it's like a fine line. I genuinely believe that collaboration wins always. So my whole approach to most things has always been, hey, I want to collaborate with you. Whether I'm bigger on social media or smaller on social media, I'm just like, I just want to work together because I think that's going to win long term for all of us. Both not just in terms of success and numbers, but more in terms of I want to be friends with you. And so I reach out regularly to people that I admire in different ways. And I reach out to them and say, hey, I'd love to get to know you. I'd love to learn from you. I'd love to connect. I'd love to be a friend. Like, not I'd love for you to teach me how you do this. And if that comes naturally from that relationship, amazing. If it never evolves into that, I've just got a great friend who now gets me. So I try and make friends in two areas. One is in an area of people who understand my life, because I feel the conversations you can have with someone who does exactly what you do are just so great because they already get you, right? And someone that I had on my podcast lately, her name's Lily Singh, Superwoman. She's become a recent friend. She's been incredibly and is incredibly successful on social media. She's using her platform for doing amazing good in the world. And she was someone I reached out to because I was just like, hey, like, you've been doing all of this for a while. You started on YouTube a lot longer than I did. And I would just love to connect from you and hear from you. And she's become an incredible friend. And we've just been sharing ideas and learning together. And it's like, that relationship's awesome. And then at the same time, I'm trying to find people who are not in media. So I still have friendships with the monks back in India. And I just spent January in India for a month. I was meditating again for roughly about 21 days. And I have them in my life because they remind me of like the roots and they remind me of the truths that bring me back. So I kind of like both. I love people who totally get my space. And usually those are people I reach out to. And then I love having my roots down. So most of my inner circle now is from people I've reached out to. Or they become people who've been reaching out to me for a long, long time and have been consistently reaching out to me asking for nothing.
The reason why you're not following through is because you're doing it alone. When you wake up and you feel like you are by yourself, you are all alone, you have no community, you're not collaborating, you're not doing this with anybody else, it's just massively difficult to follow through. Still possible, absolutely. But this is the life of an entrepreneur. This is why so many great entrepreneurs don't follow through. And it breaks my heart because you've got talent, you've got a desire to serve and to help, and you know you have a story that matters, and you're just not as consistent as you know you could be. And it's not that you suck, it's just that you're doing it alone. This is something I've struggled with in terms of being a great resource for people, because I actually have a very low community need. I think the journey that I went through is almost impossible to model, because I just woke up every day and I still made videos and I still made content and I did it by myself. And it's not prescriptive. It's really difficult to do it exactly the way that I did. Most people need more community than me. I still need it, but I have a really low, maybe it's just introverted or whatever, but I just don't need it as much as most people. You probably need more community. You probably are not following through because you feel isolated and alone. And the great promise of entrepreneurship is freedom, right? Like, you don't have to have a boss. You don't have to have employees that you hate or people on your team who you hate. You get to pick everything you want. But then to go from having a job where you have community, even if you didn't enjoy the work you were doing, what you got from the job, if you've had one, is community. That you had coworkers, and you had some people who you did like, and you had people to go to lunch with, and you had just human connection every day, where as an entrepreneur, you don't have that nearly as much or at all. And so it's very lonely. And it's really hard to do great work when you're lonely. So what's the solution? Like, okay, great. Yeah, you just tore my heart open, Evan. Now what do I do? How do I fix it? Well, first is just recognizing that is a problem. First is recognizing that there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're amazing. The only problem is you just don't have anybody that you're collaborating with, that you're doing this by yourself. So the answer is we need to now go and find other people to collaborate with. So 1, recognizing that this is a problem and you need to fix it. 2 is then finding a group that you can be a part of. And what we tend to do as entrepreneurs is lead. We want to lead. We want to create groups. We want to build. We want to make. But I would actually advocate for joining a group. 1, you don't need another thing on your plate to lead. You've got enough already that you have to worry about. And 2, when you're the leader of it, it puts you in a slightly different position where it's nice just to participate. It's nice just to have somebody else be in charge, and you just get to show up and be a part of it. So I would look for a community that you could join where it's your people. It's people like you who are trying to do similar things. I look at Movement Makers as an example, and whether you want to join Movement Makers or find your own group, amazing. But Movement Makers, I started as a way for me to help train up and coming thought leaders. It was the initial goal. It's like, hey, I want to solve the world's biggest problem, right? People don't believe in themselves enough. Not everybody's going to learn through my story, but they might be able to learn through yours. Your message, your story, your history, your way of looking at it, the thing that you went through, I haven't gone through. And so that, by definition, allows you to reach people that I can't, that Tony Robbins can't, that Jay Shetty can't, that whoever, Oprah can't, right? Your story can reach people in a way that others can't. And so I want to give you the skills to be able to go off and reach those people. That's why I started Movement Makers. What I realized getting through it is the skills alone aren't enough. The skills are not the main reason why people are not following through. You already have a lot of skills. It's not where you want to be, but you have a lot of skills and you have a lot of heart. So if you take somebody with a lot of skills and a lot of heart and they're still not following through, what's the problem? Community. You're doing it alone. You're lonely. And it's really hard to do it when you're lonely. So I shifted Movement Makers to still be, yes, skills and training and techniques and strategies. And I realized that people were winning when they connected to each other. And at the start, I was doing all the connection. Like, oh, I know this person is doing this and this person is doing that. And so I should connect those two people together. And I was, and that's created businesses. It's created podcasts together. That's created opportunities for people. But it still was limited on me connecting people together, where I wanted to make it that people would connect to each other without me. And that's what we've ended up doing in Movement Makers. One of the things I'm most proud of is we started a challenge. And again, I don't care if you join Movement Makers or not, great to have you, but this concept you can apply to your business. We started a challenge where I was giving people the tactics and telling them what to do, and that they still weren't doing the follow through. And the follow through would be making content, making videos, right? You want to be a thought leader. You got to get your message out there. So I started a challenge, and we started the first one, I think, back in October. So now we're into our 5th challenge or so, where here's the challenge. You have to make 1 video, 1 lead magnet, and 3 collaboration videos around the theme. So the theme might be momentum or impact or believe or belong. We pick a different theme every month, but something everybody can talk to, right? The theme was impact. You can talk to impact within the thing that you do. And by forcing them to collaborate with 3 other people in the group, it really led to a situation where 1 + 1 = 1,000. Because by forcing yourself to show up for somebody else, it made sure that you followed through. Where all of a sudden now people who hadn't made a single video, who might have been in Movement Makers for 3 months and still never made a video, now they're making their first videos. Now they're making their first lead magnets. Now they're making their first solo videos. Suddenly they have some follow through. And suddenly the fears and the excuses go away because they're connected to other people. When you're doing something with somebody else, there's energy there, there's momentum there, and you're much more likely to follow through. So you have to go and get a tribe. Find people who are like you, who have a similar mission. If you look at Movement Makers, everybody's mission is different in the sense that they're trying to serve different people, but everybody's connected in that we want to have an impact. We have a story that matters and we want to share it with the world. That's everybody in the group. The types of people we're trying to reach are different. And so when you are by yourself, you're the only one in your family trying to do what you do, you're the one pouring into other people, right? You're probably the most happy, optimistic, positive person. You're encouraging the people around you. You're pouring into their cups. Great, keep doing that. But who's helping you with that? When you feel low, when you feel down, when you feel not worthy, when you feel not good enough, who's pouring into you to say, hey, let's go do this thing together? Nobody. Right? Your friends, maybe. I mean, if you're lucky and you have some great friends, might be empathetic, might be encouraging to you, but they're not doing the thing that you're doing. They don't understand what you're going through. They could give you some words of affirmation and encouragement, but they don't know how to actually help. Where if you're going through a journey with somebody else, with a group of people, you're just much more likely to follow through and feel connected and feel special and feel like you matter. So step one is recognize that there's nothing wrong with you. You're amazing. You've got the heart, you've got the dream, you've got the ability to serve. And step two is then to go find your tribe. Go find people who are like you, who you see on your calendar, and you're excited to go meet with them and connect, whether it's Movement Makers or something totally separate. But don't do this alone. If you could make one change this year for the next 12 months, to have a significant impact on the growth of your journey, commit to just not doing this by yourself and watch everything in your life get better.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Good afternoon, guys. How's it going today? Have we been able to lift one person up? Or at the very least, have we been able to lift ourselves up by using our powerful thoughts? And again, I am reminding you of your power to believe that you can do this, that you right now, wherever you are, can take control of your thoughts. So you may be going through a difficult day. You may be in a challenging moment right now. Go back at it again. As I've said before, it's determination. It's that spirit of going back and learning. What could I have done differently? And it all connects to our thoughts. And then our thoughts are represented by the symbols of our words. So it's not over yet. Go back at it and try to lift someone up. If not, if you're not with people today, lift yourself up. Remind yourself of how powerful you are. And you're in charge. You're in control. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
When you stand in front of the mirror and instead of going, God, my jowls look like saddlebags and I'm today because my to-do list is so long and, and I shouldn't have had that, that sets your mind and your day on a certain course.
Yeah.
When you walk into the bathroom and you habit stack this simple high five along with brushing your teeth, you are starting your day by fulfilling your most important needs. You see yourself, you affirm yourself, you celebrate yourself. And for those of you that feel stuck, part of your problem is you are withholding that from yourself until you get to the number of the scale, until you get that job, until you do the thing you're supposed to do. And what you are doing is backwards. You need support, celebration, and acknowledgement now in order to hit that number on the scale. You see, most of us believe we're not worthy of celebration until we achieve something. And I'm here to tell you, if you start celebrating, supporting yourself as you are every single day, it will become a part of who you are, which empowers and equips you to face the things, and more importantly, empowers and equips you to do the things that scare you that you need to do. And so I'm on a mission to get people to understand that it's only through small habits of support, celebration, and love that you will achieve the happiness, the peace, the healing, the success, the fulfillment that you're seeking. You can't withhold that from yourself. The first habit that I use at least once a day is the 5-second rule. And you all know it. You count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the counting backwards acts like a giant push to help you push through resignation, self-doubt, insecurity, whatever it is that the momentary block or hesitation is. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 always gets the job done for me. And I use it once every day because, true story, I know many of you have heard me say this, but I invented the 5-second rule 13 years ago to get out of bed during one of the worst moments of my life. 13 years later, I still use it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, to get out of bed. And I think, Evan, you were talking about this. I think I saw this in a training that you did or one of your videos, or maybe we talked about this on our Instagram Live. You know, there's all this research about the fact that if you repeat a behavior for a certain number of days, that it'll become a habit. That may be true, but I believe that if you don't like doing it, it may never become something that's automatic. And that's why I love the 5-second rule. 13 years later, everybody, I still hate to get out of bed. I know intellectually lying in bed is the worst place for me to be. I know intellectually laying there and thinking about the day, worst place to be. I know intellectually I should get out of bed. I know the research about the snooze alarm and not hitting it, but I still don't like to. And so I still, 13 years later, everybody, feel resistance every morning when the alarm rings. So every day I use the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to get out of bed. And oftentimes I use the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to exercise. I also use the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to put my phone down and put it in a basket in our kitchen so that I don't live in what psychologists call the gray zone, which is where your phone is on you all the time and you're, in your life, never able to disconnect.
Want to be happy? Build a life, not just a business. Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and this channel is created to help you overcome the #1 challenge that is holding you back, a lack of belief in yourself. You watch these videos because you know there's something more inside you too. You've got Michael Jordan level genius at something. So today, let's live your best belief life and learn the habits to reprogram your life for success. Enjoy. Habit number 2, prime yourself with Tony Robbins.
I change my body radically, and I do 3 things to make sure that my brain is primed. And what I mean by primed is, most people think their thoughts are their thoughts, Lewis, and you and I know better, because you and I have read the studies, right? Priming is a psychological principle where you think thoughts and you think they're yours, but very often they're created by the environment. So one example was Harvard has done multiple studies on this, and one of the studies they did was taking people, walking up to people. They hired 2 actors. They walked up to 100 people. They had to do the exact same thing, men and women. And what they did is they'd walk up with a cup of coffee in their hand, and they'd look at you and go, "Here, would you hold this for a second?" And they'd look down and reach in their pocket to pull out their phone. And most people then take the coffee. There's nobody there. You're not looking to give it back, right? And then they do what they're doing on the phone. They put it back in. They go, thank you so much. And they take their coffee back and they walk away. But then about 20 minutes later, if you're at a mall or a school campus or whatever, a person comes by with a clipboard and they give you $20 and they say, listen, I know this sounds crazy, but if you'll give me 30 seconds of your time, the $20 is yours. I need you to read 2 minutes of this, literally this little story, and then just answer 3 questions for me. Here's the interesting part. Half the people have a reaction, more than 80%, and half have a reaction 80% difference. And here's the question. They read the same story, but half the people are handed hot coffee, half the people are handed iced coffee. And the question they ask is, how would you describe the main character of the story after they read a few paragraphs? And the people who are handed hot coffee say the person is warm and genuine, 81% of the people, 79 to 80, 79.8, it's a 1% difference, natural variability. Who are given the iced coffee say the person is cold and uncaring. Now, I could tell you 20 studies like that would blow your mind how your brain is conditioned or primed by the environment. And think about all that's gone on with COVID over the last 2 years and how many people's brains live in fear. And in my new health book, I put in there just to remind people with COVID, outside being 80 years old, the number one, or having 4 or 5 comorbidities, the number one factor, 80% of the people die of COVID, 79.8% are obese. That's something you can do something about. The second factor, according to the CDC, is fear. Because anxiety makes people get short of breath, they freak out, and their whole nervous system starts to go shut down. Your immune system can be shut down just by fear alone. And so this experience of life that we have, most people just don't understand that you are being primed all the time. And unless you prime yourself, you're going to be primed by the environment, which most people understand that your brain right now is being conditioned and triggered whether you know it or not. If you're in any social network, it's being done continuously by algorithms. So I want to take control of my brain. So I do 3 quick things. 1, I take 3 minutes of those 10 minutes after I've changed my body, and I focus on 3 different events in my life that I'm grateful for. I usually pick 2 big ones and 1 small one. It could be as simple as a smile on my daughter's face, the wind against my skin. But I don't like, if you've ever been on a roller coaster and you remember the roller coaster over there, it's not the same as remember going over the edge like you're there. So I do it in an associated way, and it changes your biochemistry. Now it sounds pretty, positive thinky. I'm going to be grateful. But there's a value to it because the 2 emotions that mess up your business, your life, your relationships are anger and fear. And you can't be angry and grateful simultaneously. And you can't be fearful and grateful simultaneously. So by starting my day with that, and it's not some fake pump up positive thinking, they're real experiences. So it literally teaches your body to go in that state, because otherwise the environment we're in right now, there's a whole lot of uncertainty and fear. Then real fast, I do this 3-minute process that's kind of like a blessing. And then 3 minutes, the last 3 minutes are called 3 to Thrive, where I focus on 3 things I want to accomplish. But instead of thinking I want to accomplish, I see, feel, and experience it as done. I feel grateful. I celebrate it. And it trains your brain. So in 10 minutes, I'm done. Third thing that I'll do, I immediately send a message or a text or an audio message to somebody as a sincere compliment. And I don't go, dude, great job, or wow, you're cool. I say, hey, listen, I saw you on Tuesday with those kids, and I saw you take that extra 20 minutes no one else did. And I just want you to know, I saw that, I thought that was incredible. So I'm always very specific so they know it's not just some positive thinking bullshit call, it's sincerely doing it. It makes me constantly look for the good in the people I work with. Fourth thing I do is whatever I don't want to do, the most challenging part of the day. I want to go handle that problem. I want to handle that issue, because after you do that, everything has momentum. So those 4 are my core.
Habit number 3, get rid of negative thoughts with Grant Cardone.
Literally get rid of all the negative, automatic, negative, out of control thinking that anybody has. I got to get people to like me. That's a negative comment. I don't have to get people to like me. People either like me or they don't. I need to lose weight, okay? If I can do this, you can do this, but it's going to be hard if you don't change your mind. You got to change the way you think. And the way to change the way you think, ultimately there's 2 ways, okay? There's probably 3 or 4 ways, but first of all, the one way is to start discipline yourself. Catch yourself every time you say, I don't have time, Say, hey, I create time. Every time you say, I don't have money, I create money. Or maybe just start literally like talking to yourself that, hey, I am a millionaire. I am a multimillionaire. I own, if you're in the apartment game and you want to be in apartments, but you don't know anything about apartments, you can start literally talking to yourself saying, I am worth, or I own 100 units. I did this for years before I ever bought an apartment. I used to write down, I own 20 apartments that earns 12% cash flow. Second thing is, if you want to permanently get rid of the negative parts in your mind, send me an email to help@grantcardone.com and put in mind, M-I-N-D. Okay, I'm gonna turn you on to something I did. I'm not gonna go into it here. It's just too deep, it's too much, it's too heavy, it's too simple, frankly, for anybody to even get. Because most people believe they're stuck with their thinking. Like it's yours permanently, and you gotta push and shove, and you gotta discipline yourself every day. What if you could just get rid of it? Okay, I'm not talking about hypnosis. I'm not talking about, drugs, doing mushrooms. I heard a guy the other day talking about how he experimented with mushrooms to make himself brighter. Another guy put peppermint in his ears to make him smarter. I'm like, dude, you guys got to be kidding. Okay, come on. Come on, man. Come on. Really? If you have to take something to make you smarter, look, get rid of whatever's making you dumber. Just get rid of it. You shouldn't have to add something. You should not have to add something to make you smarter. You should not have to add something to make you faster. You should remove whatever is slowing you down.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Habit number 4, get momentum with Brendon Burchard.
When you are super down, outside of finding that emotional reasoning for where you are, is to start getting momentum. Because with momentum comes hope. With momentum comes motivation. With momentum comes, that feeling that there's a reason for tomorrow. And so it's as simple as just saying, okay, what are 3 things I'm going to do today? And I don't mean that like a lot of personal development guys would say, like, what are your 3 big goals for the day? Arr! I'm like, dude, sometimes that first goal is, I'm going to shower today. I'm really going to shower today. I'm going to walk to the library. I'm going to come home. And that's all they got. Like literally, that's all they got. And you got to honor that struggle when you're in that place. Like know that where you're at, it is okay that you're there. And now you're going to need help. And now you're going to have to set up some daily practices just every day, win a little bit. Not like win your dreams, not like crush through goals, not like be a badass, not like, no, just momentum, man. Get some momentum and be okay if that momentum is really small, because it will build. Trust that that momentum builds, and trust that those gloomy and bad, dark days, trust that those are going to be there. They'll get less and less and less as you learn how to cope, but they're going to be there. And so when they're there, it's one of outside of teaching people to bring the joy in my life, I teach people to honor the struggle, honor the difficulty. When we honor the struggle instead of hate the struggle, we can really achieve extraordinary things because our mindset's in the right place. As soon as you honor the struggle, you accept that, oh, of course, there should be struggle here. I should honor this process. When you go to the gym to work out, you honor that this is going to be hard, and honor that process of getting better. And the more that you bring honor to it, the more your psyche builds with strength, and you get a little bit of that esteem back because you see yourself engaging something versus avoiding it and running away. You see yourself connecting with something and giving it reverence. You're like, like, I have reverence for the difficulties of life. They may be better. So I don't want a friction-free life. I'm not interested in it. You know, I like to say sometimes that, you know, the journey to greatness begins the moment that our, you know, deep desires for comfort and ease are overpowered by our desires to connect and contribute.
Habit number 5, become confident with Jay Shetty.
The first thing that confident people do is that they work through their past. Often our anxiety and insecurity comes not from where we are now, but what we've been through before. We think that what we went through was something we deserved, or we feel what we went through defines who we are today, and that makes us feel a lack of confidence. Confident people, however, don't let their past live as it is. They try to make sense of it. They try to learn how they can navigate through those past experiences and see how they've been affected. I want to share with you a really practical activity you can do. What are the gifts that you received from your parents? What are the skills? What are the qualities? What are the abilities that you gained from their parenting? When you realize that, you're already reaffirming the definition. As you learn to assure yourselves and become confident about the abilities and qualities you have, you're creating confidence. Now, I also want you to reflect on what you believe are the gaps that you may have received from your background. What are the areas of your life that you feel you missed out on that make you feel insecure? When you understand that, you start to recognize that this isn't a gap in you. It's a gap or a hole in your experience. Now remember, you can always improve your experience. You can always improve yourself. But first, we have to conquer the past by trying to understand it. The second way to develop confidence is to construct a high-value skill. When we have a high-value skill, we learn to value ourselves and we don't let other people dictate our value. A lot of the time we don't feel confident is because we don't feel we have something to offer. But here's the thing, each and every person has a genius and has unique potential, but we have to turn that potential into an expertise through practice. For me, I remember being an extremely shy kid growing up. My parents forced me to go to public speaking and drama school from age 11 through to age 18. I realized that as I developed this skill to articulate and communicate effectively, it allowed me to be more confident. And then my confidence was gained when I learned through the Vedas, when I lived with the monks and learned how to meditate. As soon as you start to learn a high-value skill, you start to develop your confidence. Young people especially struggle because they feel like a generalist. They feel like they're okay at everything. When we can actually focus on mastery, we start to develop confidence. And this is a healthy way of developing confidence, because in the pursuit of mastery, you will overcome lots of challenges. You will have to develop resilience. You'll actually have to deal with setback and failure. Now your confidence is not based on arrogance or cockiness. Your confidence is based on your ability to deal with challenging situations. Your skill could be anything. Marketing, technology, acting, singing, web design, photography, videography, the list goes on. I want you to schedule your next 4 weekends to be experimenting with a new skill or a new class or workshop. Then based on that, I want you to decide which one you may want to turn into a high-value skill. The more you experience, the more you explore, the more you allow yourself to be exposed to, the more likely you're going to find something that you want to turn into expertise. The next step is to constantly learn. Now, this may sound like a lot of work, but actually learning can be something that gives you a sense of achievement, sense of drive, sense of momentum, and a feeling like you're moving forward and towards something. When you dabble in articles, books, podcasts, you start to feel this sense of being alive. You have something to share in every conversation. You have something to add. You are more inclined to listen, to learn more, and see how your idea develops. Confidence comes from the ability to engage in a conversation and the feeling that you're moving forward, the feeling that you don't feel stuck or trapped in a space. Learning and consistently learning can truly transform the way you feel about yourself. You start to trust yourself. You think to yourself, wow, I remember this from what I read last week. I was able to apply that idea at work today. When you start to connect the dots around what you're learning and what you're growing in, that makes you feel a sense of confidence. One of my favorite ways to practice this method is by using the Blinkist app. You can learn so much from over 4,000 non-fiction books that they've simplified into short blinks. These blinks help you understand the summary and the essence of each book that exists on the platform. You can also listen to the blinks if you're traveling or moving around or prefer not to read. The fourth step is to be compassionate. When you're compassionate toward yourself, you give yourself a break for not knowing everything or getting everything right all the time. I used to think that if every time a client asked me a question, I could give the perfect, best, most powerful answer, then that was what made me valuable. I started to realize that I couldn't fix someone's problems through an answer. I started to recognize that listening, understanding, creating content that allowed me to think more broadly and deeply was actually going to be more useful to someone when they could make sense of it themselves. Having compassion for myself and realizing I didn't have to be perfect all the time, which is impossible for each and every person, allowed me to actually find my unique potential. And my clients, what they really enjoyed was the conversation that came out of it, not that they were impressed by a speedy response. Remember, it's not about being perfect. Confidence shows that you're okay with being wrong, you're okay with not knowing, and you're okay with desiring to learn and research so you can expand your skills. Usually when people work hard, they become more hard-hearted. They become more cold, they start to judge people more because they think they're doing more than others. But when you work hard for the right purpose and the right reasons, you actually become more soft-hearted. That soft-heartedness makes you more compassionate and empathetic to realizing if you've had to work so hard, imagine how difficult it is for others. You start to understand their journey better. The next step is called calm responses. Confidence comes not from reacting fast, but responding slowly. Sometimes the person who speaks the least, their opinion matters the most because they're not saying a lot, they're listening, processing, and then responding. And when they speak, people listen. Why? Because they don't waste words. They don't come across hasty. They've genuinely thought about everyone's opinion in the room. They've taken the time to process it. Remember, less is more. Be mindful and calm in your responses. Take a moment and respond at the pace of love or the rhythm of love. Don't act out of force or haste. How can you feel confident if you feel rushed, if you feel forced to say something? Go at your own pace in your own time. A lot of the time we don't feel confident because we're desperately seeking validation from others. We always ask ourselves, what will people say? What will they think? How will they react to what I feel? And the challenge is that we've been trained to ask everyone everything. From when we try on a new jacket or a new coat and we look at our friend, family member or partner and we say, what do you think I look in this? Confidence comes from asking yourself that question. How do I feel I look in this? Often we message our friends and family and say, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? What would you like to do? It's really important that we also get to know ourselves and ask ourselves, what would I like to do? When we start to find certainty and awareness around our likes and dislikes, what we feel works for us and what doesn't work for us, that builds a sense of confidence. Usually when we spend time with a lot of people, we hear a lot of noises, we hear a lot of ideas, opinions, expectations, and even obligations. But when you start to find time with yourself, you can ask yourself deeper questions. Ask yourself how you truly feel about something and what your genuine beliefs are. Then you can act on that internal certainty rather than all of the external uncertainty. And finally, the people that are confident because they competently prepare. Preparation is so underestimated in every field. If you're confident, it's not because you just have a sense of self-belief. It's not just because you act it. It's because you've practiced, prepared, and worked. You've planned, you've visualized, you've prepared your energy, you've prepared your mindset. That's why the development of daily habits allows us to get there.
Habit number 6, take control of your morning with Ed Mylett.
I changed what I did in the morning and I changed what I did in the evening. And so somehow by grabbing control of my morning and by grabbing control of my evening, I got some measure of control over the middle of my day. I was an out of control person back in those days, meaning this: I woke up worried, stressed, fearful, and I immediately start thinking about a bill I had to pay, something that was wrong. And I'm in a state of reaction to begin I'm talking within 6 minutes of waking up, 6 seconds. Most people listening to this, that's what they do. I said, I got to grab control of my morning, and I set up routines in my morning. Maybe they served me, maybe they didn't, but they were things I could deliver on doing for myself. And so not only did that give me control over the day, but I started to stack my self-confidence too. My morning routines are really detailed. I get up and I hydrate. The second thing I do every morning is I do something cold. So whether that's I jump in the ocean, because now I live in the ocean, but in those days it was taking a cold shower or splashing some cold water in my face or walking out when it was cold. It shocks our nervous system. Our fight or flight kicks in. We're in a cellular, electric, alive state. I obviously do some prayer and meditation every single morning. I've still not touched my telephone. So there's a rule. There's 30 minutes I cannot touch my telephone when I wake up. That's the hardest thing to do in the world and the thing that could benefit you the most, because whatever on that phone, you have to react to. And typically it's stuff that's not great. And so I don't touch that. I do my meditation and my prayer, and I do some stretching. I do some breathing exercises. And then at that point, I allow myself to enter the world after I've got my state controlled.
And habit number 7, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is hack your decision-making process with Bob Proctor.
If you turn making a decision into a habit, you're going to learn how to do a whole lot of things you may think you can't do. See, what we're doing is we're exploring a side of our personality that we really don't understand. Now, I photographed a page out of here. Napoleon Hill said, those who reach decisions promptly and definitely know what they want, and they generally get it. The leaders in every walk of life decide quickly and firmly. That's the major reason why they're leaders. He said the world is a habit of making room for the man or woman whose words and actions show they know where they're going. And he went on to explain why we have difficulty here, for very good reason. Indecision is a habit, which usually begins in youth. The habit takes on permanency as the youth goes through grade school, high school, and eventually through college without any definite purpose. The major weakness of all educational systems is they neither teach nor encourage the habit of definite decision. Do you know the reason most people don't make decisions? Because they can't see how they're going to get there. So what do? They keep doing things that they can see how they're going to get there. And that's why their life never really changes.
Good evening, guys. How did it go today? Think about your day. Were you able to have at least one victory, one win, where you lifted someone else up? Or if not someone else, yourself? Well, I want to share a personal story with you because, as we've said before, this stuff is really hard. It's really hard to apply even one positive thought energy like lifting people up. And so I want to share my story with you. And this is an example of how hard it is and how we have to work on it every single day. I begin every day by starting off and listening to Les Brown's speech at the Georgia Dome as I'm cooking my breakfast, because I know and I can feel in my mind there's thoughts that are trying to come back and attack me and show the negative side of things, the fearful side of what might happen. But when I listen to Les's powerful voice, it reminds me, it lifts me up. And so do what you have to do. Listen to whatever you have to do to lift you up. Have a great evening, everyone.
Eat less often. Those 3 words, eat less often. That is the one thing that will have the biggest impact on your longevity based on all the science we'll talk about today.
Okay. And this doesn't mean eat fewer calories necessarily. It can, and that's good.
Yes.
That's good. But a lot of people struggle to do that, to eat fewer calories.
Well, it comes naturally. If you're down to 1 meal a day, which I am now, you shed weight and then you get your 20-year-old body back. That's a nice bonus. But then you maintain that weight. You have a larger dinner, which is what I do to make sure I'm not becoming malnourished. Clearly, we're not talking about malnutrition or starvation here. It's about packing your calories into a shorter period of time.
That's because packing your meals into a shorter period almost inevitably means less calories, but that's not really what's happening here, right? It's not just about less calories. It's about what eating less often does inside of our bodies.
Right. And we'll get to that. But really, it's not just about the period of eating. It's the period of not eating that's so important for boosting the body's defenses against aging to maximize longevity. And we'll talk about how that actually works in a minute. But you can still have a large body and fast and get the benefits. In my lab, we've looked at mice that are obese and tricked them into thinking that they're fasted, and they live just as long as a skinny mouse. So really, it's about getting your body into this state of defense at any weight. Though I would say that there are certain optimal body weights that it's clear that if you're carrying excess weight, you're going to accelerate your aging clock.
What we don't want people to do is get the idea, though, that, oh, good, this works even if you're overweight, and so I can stay overweight, and then as long as I fast a little, it's going to be fine. That's not what you're saying also.
Right. There are certain body weights, waist to height ratios that are optimal for humans, is about 0.5. But yeah, losing weight is helpful. We're not fat shaming anybody, but we're going through the science. This podcast is about what the science says, not what's socially acceptable. And it is true that if you're leaner, you will live longer. That is a fact. It's not necessary to get benefits by doing what we're going to say. But also, interestingly, as a side effect of eating less often, you will lose weight. I did. I've shed about 15 pounds since the beginning of the pandemic. And I look better. I feel better. And it's a nice side effect. But ultimately, what we're going to do here is we're going to say, these are the kind of things you should consider in your lifestyle. We're going to help you get there. We're going to ease you into it. There are some tricks that make it easier. And ultimately, you're going to end up with a lifestyle and hopefully a body that allows you to live decades longer.
Need motivation?
Watch the top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, David Sinclair, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, get enough sleep.
How come that sleep isn't a hormesis stressor like fasting or exercise?
Well, it's anti-hormesis. It's necessary for long life and health. There's no question about that. You mean a lack of sleep? Why doesn't that work?
Yeah. Why can't you? Because you're saying fast, it's uncomfortable. It makes you feel, it makes you live longer. We're in scary mode. We need to extend our life or else we might not be able to reproduce before we die. So knuckle down. And the same thing goes for exercise. You're under stress. Why not just, why isn't sleep or a lack of sleep have the same impact?
That's a really, 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 really good question. No one's ever asked me that. But the answer is that the longevity gene that we study, we think it's really important for human longevity too, is part of the circadian clock. And when you mess that up, either through lack of sleep, jet lag, or just aging, which diminishes the clock's ability to form high peaks and low peaks, then it impacts your longevity, probably because it's affecting your ability to fight disease through longevity defenses. But it seems to be a positive feedback problem, which is that if you don't get enough sleep, you screw up your aging, and then you age, and aging screws up your sleep. And by the time you're elderly, you're not sleeping well, and you're under this accelerated aging program. Interestingly, that I talk a lot about NAD, which is part of my research, controls this SIRT1 defense system. And the levels go down as you age, but they also go up and down during the day. As you're waking up, you start to make more NAD. And if you disrupt that NAD level, you disrupt your sleep. And so that's why I tell people if they're going to boost their NAD levels, do it coincident with the clock as it's rising. Hit it then, which is in the morning. Because I know from experience that if you take it late at night, you're going to bump up your body, make it think that it's the morning, and you'll have trouble sleeping.
Rule number 3, exercise.
And when we're talking, we've already talked about like the real key effects that come from eating less often to basically turn on this adversity mimetic effect. There's another really easy way to do this though.
Right. And that's get off your butt.
Just get off your butt.
Yeah, it's not that hard, as we say, sitting here doing this podcast. But one way I do it is I have a standing desk. So my butt actually atrophied. When we were writing this book, Lifespan, I ended up with a cramp in my piriformis muscle, which is the one
Wait, you're what?
Yeah. It's a small muscle.
Where is it?
Size doesn't matter. It's right in your hip. It goes through that hole in your pelvis. And it's essential for standing. And it was
I always
cramped up.
wondered what that hole was for.
Yeah.
There's a muscle that goes through it?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And then, but it was cramped up on my left-hand side. So I was limping for about 9 months after we wrote the book. And I thought, oh, great, I'm writing about health and longevity, and I've now crippled myself. I eventually got it to go away with a combination of exercise, physio, and an injection of NAD in my butt, which we'll get to in probably the next episode. But the point here is that sitting down is bad for us. You atrophy, you have less muscle, which means your hormone levels, particularly testosterone, will go down, and you become, in pain. That's not a good thing. But ultimately, if you have not a lot of muscle in your hips, particularly, you can break your bones when you fall over, when you're older. And all of that means you need to get off your butt, stand up, even better, go for a walk, even better, go for a run or cycle to get what we call a hypoxic state going. Your body needs to suck in more oxygen, and that has remarkable health benefits.
And we really have to work hard at this because, you're saying this as we're sitting in these chairs, right? A couple of days after I sat down in a chair for a long time in an airplane to get here, right? We've got a nice comfy couch over there that we've been working on. We actually have to actively pursue opportunities to do this, to get exercise, to promote this adversity mimetic effect, because our lives are built around comfort and sedentariness.
Yes, that's true. And what I think most people don't appreciate is that exercise isn't just beneficial for your fitness and for your vitality. It actually can stop diseases in their tracks. Exercise can slow down cancer. In fact, it can prevent up to 23% of all cancers from occurring. That's true for cardiovascular disease. In fact, it has an even bigger effect on that, 30% reduction just by doing moderate exercise every week. 50 minutes is sufficient, or 3 times a week with 10 minutes. All-cause mortality, right? So all-cause mortality is basically slowing down aging. That's a 27% reduction in the rate of aging just by exercising.
The thing that you just said, I love this idea of connecting the idea of all-cause mortality with aging, because as we've presented here, as you've been arguing for quite some time, most diseases which bring us toward the end of our lives are really just an accumulation of the symptoms of aging. And so if you bring down the disease rate across various diseases, which is bringing down all-cause mortality, you're really it's just another way of saying we're bringing down aging.
We must be, exactly. And we can also now measure that with the biological clock, the so-called Horvath clock, named after my good friend Steve Horvath. That is now a measure of the process that leads to all of these diseases that kill us. And one way that we know for a fact to slow down the ticking of that biological clock is exercise.
Rule number 4, eat more plants.
But I still think the best bang for the longevity buck is to do both well. Eat less often and eat the right things. Now, I'll preface this to say I'm not a nut about this. I will eat very occasionally a dessert. Usually I steal from others, which doesn't count, right?
Exactly.
But you got to live life, right? What's a long life if it's not enjoyable anyway? Yes. But what I also found, and this is, I'll get to your question in a second, but my microbiome right now and stomach is at a point where if I try to overeat on a steak, which I did a couple of days ago, I actually had a fried chicken specifically. For 2 days, I felt terrible. I couldn't sleep. It wouldn't go down. So I'm now at a point where even if I want to binge on meat and fried foods, I just can't. It just feels bad. But what do I recommend? Well, what the data says, which I try to follow, is that plant-based foods will be better than meat-based foods. And I know that there are a lot of people who disagree. But one of the facts is, there's a few facts. One is that people who live a long time tend to eat those type of diets, Mediterranean, Okinawa diet. They're eating mostly plants with a little bit of meat and not a lot of red meat. And the other fact is that in animals, we know that there's a mechanism that's called mTOR, little m, capital TOR, that responds to certain amino acids that are found in more abundance in meat. And when it responds, it actually shortens lifespan. And the converse, if you starve it of those 3 amino acids, mostly in meat, then it extends lifespan. And there's a drug called rapamycin, which some people are experimenting with, that does that. So you might be able to, I'm just saying this here from all my colleagues, we don't know the results here, but you could potentially take a rapamycin-like drug and counteract the effects of meat in the long run. Don't know. We should try that, actually. We could do that in the lab. But getting to the bottom of this, what I think is going on is that just like testosterone and growth hormone, you will get temporary, maybe not temporary, immediate health benefits. You'll feel great. You'll get more muscle, energy. But the problem is, I think it's at the expense of long-term health and longevity.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Rule number 5, avoid sugary drinks and food.
Now that we sort of set the stage for when we eat, which is really important, when we eat, we still have to acknowledge we have to eat sometimes. Somebody's gonna, sometimes you're gonna, if you intermittently fast, if you're going, 20 hours without food, you're gonna have breakfast or you're gonna have dinner. So yeah, there's gonna be something on your plate. It's really important also what's actually on your plate. And that's what this next half of this episode is about, is what we should eat when we are eating. And maybe the best way to start this really, though, is to talk about what definitely shouldn't be, or not definitely shouldn't. There should be a lot less of on that plate.
Right. Well, the big killer is sugar.
Yeah.
Glucose, particularly fructose, is also pernicious. And if you give animals lots of glucose, and especially fructose, they'll get fatty liver disease, they'll get diabetes. It's really bad.
And this one is like absolutely not controversial, right? Like we're going to talk about meat later and people are going to be like really up in arms. But if you say like the big killer is sugar, there's not like a group of people that's going to come hunt us down. Like sugar is bad.
It is. And
why?
Well, why? Well, there are 2 reasons that glucose is bad when it spikes. 3 if you include the brain fog. But let's just talk about physiology here. One is that you're going to have glucose attached to proteins that makes them glom up. Think of it like caramelized body parts. This will ultimately lower your longevity, reduce your longevity, give you type 2 diabetes and probably cardiovascular disease on top of that. So that's one, keep those glucose levels down. But also what glucose is going to be doing to you at high levels is shutting off those protective mechanisms. Remember, particularly AMPK and the sirtuins, they get switched off by sugar. So by having that up for most of the day, if you're eating 3 meals plus snacks, your defenses against disease and aging are going to be working at a minimum. So instead, keep those glucose levels low and consistent. You won't get the brain fog. You'll get fewer proteins modified that'll lead to disease. And thirdly, importantly, you'll actually stimulate your body's natural defenses against disease and aging.
So sort of like the first step, sugars. Let's get rid of the sugars.
Yeah, on that note, by the way, I gave up dessert at age 40, though occasionally I steal it, and it doesn't count if you steal it, right?
No, I think there's like a special little pocket it goes into that doesn't count against
it's invisible.
any of your, right. Inside Tracker doesn't pick it up.
Right. Well, here's the point. You can quit something, but you don't have to be draconian about it. I still like to steal a few scoops of ice cream if I see it, but I'm not going to eat a giant bowl of ice cream every night. That's a quick way to shorter lifespan.
We're not trying to ruin everybody's joy.
No, not at all. Often when I give talks at dinners, people skip dessert after I've spoken. I feel bad about that.
Well, you remember we were talking about doing an experiment where we would have a conversation around a table with people and then have the servers come with like a birthday cake or something and just like watch them.
We still should do that. But yeah, so glucose is a bad one. Something else to avoid is super high protein because mTOR, it can be activated, but you don't want it activated all the time because it's not going to turn on the autophagy, the defenses to recycle proteins.
And this one is going to piss a lot of people off.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who believe that carnivore diets are the best for longevity.
And for some people, a lot of aminos are appropriate?
Well, certainly if you're an athlete or you want to bulk up, there are short-term gains. You'll feel better if you eat meat. You'll obviously have the protein to build up that muscle. But we can go through the evidence. When you look at populations of what they eat and how long they live, as well as the short-term effects when you eat a high-protein, carnivorous, red meat-based diet, those changes will be good in the short run. But long-term, there's no evidence. In fact, I would say there's counter-evidence to that being beneficial for longevity if that's your goal.
And that's because of the inhibition of TOR.
In large part, yes. The sirtuins will also get switched off by high protein as well.
So aminos are important. We have to have them. If we don't have them, we die. But you can get aminos from plants as well as from animals.
Yeah, it's funny when I say I've gone vegetarian recently, which is a fact.
Where are you going to get your protein?
Yeah, where do you get protein from? Well, what do you think plant's made of? It's also mostly protein. Now, they're not as bioavailable, so you're getting like 2/3 the amount as you would from a steak.
The body has to
equivalent.
work a little harder for it.
Great. Yeah. I want my body to work harder. It's good for it. It burns energy. It's also activating these defenses, as we mentioned. So I'm now trying out this a full vegetarian diet. I'm not yet vegan, but that actually probably works even better for longevity, as the science will tell.
Rule number 6, improve your mental health.
There are a couple of things. Mental health is very important to me as well. I've learned to reduce stress. Don't worry about the little things. Think about, will this matter in 5-10 years? I know you're very, very good at this. I listen to you as well. I'm grateful to you as well.
Thank you.
And the ability to cope with pressure.
Yeah.
I was a very nervous kid, and in my 20s and in my 30s, getting a job at Harvard was pretty scary. In my 40s and now in my 50s, I'm a relatively calm guy, and you have to work at it. It doesn't come naturally. Some breathing. I'm more recently now trying meditation at night.
Oh, yeah.
Just for a little bit, just for 15 minutes or so a day. But I find that I can even get by with less sleep. I have a helmet and a headset that helps me. I'm not very good at meditation because my mind is everywhere.
I imagine.
But it's called BrainTap, and I have no connection to them, but I like it. BrainTap has headphones. You listen to calming music, and it's shining light in your eyes at frequencies that get you to calm down. So mental health, very important, because if you're always overly stressed, a little bit of agitation's good, right? It gets us going. But if you have cortisol coursing through your veins, it will accelerate aging.
Rule number 7, do cold therapy.
Let's shift now to talking about cold therapy, which is another thing that a lot of people are experimenting with now, another thing that there are centers for all over the place, but that the research is still sort of catching up to the excitement. So we're sort of on the edge here of our understanding, but we do know some things about what cold does to the human body and actually what cold does to organisms across the spectrum.
Yeah, in fact, when we wrote Lifespan, there was almost no data on this. But now we know actually that one of the huge benefits you get from being cold is the production of brown fat. So what is brown fat? Brown fat, or often called beige fat, is found in babies. It's typically to allow them to stay warm because they don't shiver until they're about 1 year of age. And what was discovered about 10 years ago at Harvard by Bruce Spiegelman and Ron Kahn, a couple of my colleagues, is that adults also have some brown fat. And they discovered this with PET scanning. And they found that it mostly exists on your back, in your shoulder blades. And when you get cold, it revs up. You get more of this brown fat. And this is a good thing because brown fat is extremely healthy. It revs up metabolism. It burns white fat. And we think that there are these factors, little chemicals, little proteins that get secreted out of brown fat that make the rest of the body healthy as well. One of the reasons we know that is because there's a gene that makes brown fat, makes cells turn brown from white to beige to brown, and it's called PRDM16. And mice that lack this gene, they don't have brown fat, but they also develop type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease as a result.
Cold impacts not just humans, it impacts all organisms. We've seen this in model organisms too, these effects, right? There's the studies in worms, there's been studies in mice. You've got a couple of favorites, I know. You like talking about the mice that got to spoon together.
Oh yeah, so that one is a bit of a disappointment in the field that we had these dwarf mice that Mike Bonkowski, who was working in my lab, he was the guy that generated the longest lived mouse. He called it Yoda. And it was very long-lived because it had a mutation in a gene for the growth hormone receptor, which means they were small and dwarfs. And these little small dwarf mice would live up to 3 times longer than a normal mouse. It was quite an amazing thing. And the field was rejoicing, wow, we figured out how to make mammals live that much longer. And then it was noticed that they were shivering, little cold mice. And so the researchers thought, we'll just give them friends. So
they weren't shivering because the lab was cold. They were shivering because
they didn't have a companion. You know, mice like to live not solitary, but with other mice. And so they gave them a buddy. Each of these dwarfs had a buddy. And then the majority of the lifespan extension went away.
When they got their buddy.
Yeah, which is super disappointing, right? But what it told us was that a large effect of longevity was due to them being cold.
And why is that happening? When we go back to like thinking about the survival circuit, what's happening?
Yeah, well, the trick is, let's go back to the brown fat. What brown fat has a lot of is mitochondria. And within those mitochondria, they're actually quite different. They have high levels of proteins called UCPs, or uncoupling proteins, which insert into the membrane of the mitochondria and allow those protons that were built up to leak through. Instead of going through that pump that makes the energy, they leak through. Why is that interesting? Well, first of all, that generates heat. That helps the animal and we survive cold. But also you get fewer free radicals produced when you uncouple mitochondria with these proteins. And consistent with that, if you make an animal, let's say it's a worm or a fly or even a mouse that has high levels of these UCP genes, they actually live longer. So uncoupling and reducing that free radical load, and you can do this with cold therapy, we think, is beneficial to health.
Rule number 8, take aspirin every day.
I take a baby aspirin every day. There's an overwhelming majority of positive data that aspirin is helpful, not just for cardiac issues in the future, but also prevention of certain cancers, such as colon cancer. And you know, the media tends to give equal weighting to the positives and negatives of science, but when you actually read the literature, you find that it can be 99 versus 1, positive versus negative. And that's the case for aspirin in my view. So I continue to take that every day. I think in general, it's good to try and dampen inflammation in the body. And so until I see a study that I believe that it's dangerous to take, I'm going to continue taking it.
Rule number 9, reset your aging clock.
So suffice it to say, there are several ways that we think that we can get the human body to do this, to reset the epigenetic clock. We can do it through cellular reprogramming. It looks like it's possible to do through exosomes. And you just mentioned pills. And it does appear that it's possible that this is what metformin is contributing to, and some of the other drugs and supplements that we talked about in an earlier episode. But I mentioned metformin because a lot of people are going to say, okay, all of this stuff is great. You've told me a bunch of stuff that probably won't be accessible to me anytime soon. There is a treatment regimen that is being tested out right now that starts with metformin, but a couple of other elements as well. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, this is my colleague Greg Fahey, Dr. Greg Fahey, and he's been working on anti-aging or longevity treatments for a while, and he hit upon a triple treatment. He uses growth hormone, which is known to raise blood sugar levels. We talked about that as a downside. But then he realized if he could include DHEA, a hormone that is depleted during aging, as well as metformin, he could mitigate the negative effects of growth hormone. And he gave that for 12 months to 10 healthy men that were aged 51 to 65. And lo and behold, when he looked at the biological clock of those men, they went back 2.5 years, which may not sound like a lot, but as I thought about it, if you could truly reverse your age every year by 1 year, that means you're not going to age.
All right, something that confuses me about this combinatory therapy regimen that Fahey used in this small scale trial is that it takes advantage of human growth hormone, which earlier in this episode we said probably not a long-term anti-aging benefit. So what was the idea, do you think, behind using HGH?
Well, HGH had been shown previously to reconstitute the thymus. This is a little organ gland that's here in your chest that is important for the immune system. This is where your T cells, your immune cells come from. And growth hormone can stimulate the regeneration of this as it degrades over time. I'm age 50. I probably have what's called a lot of thymic degeneration and involution. It's a vestige of what it used to be. And growth hormone can stimulate that, but it comes with side effects, as we mentioned, not least of which is increase in insulin insensitivity or glucose intolerance. In other words, the cell doesn't take up the glucose from the body when you have a lot of growth hormone around. So he combined that with 2 diabetes therapies. One is metformin, which everybody knows. And Greg also showed actually in an experiment that he did on himself that DHEA, this hormone that some people take for longevity, can also control blood glucose levels. So that combination of 3 gave the best effect. But I should say that measuring the clock in the blood doesn't mean the whole body is being rejuvenated. That's just one indicator. So what I'd like to see Greg and his colleagues do is to measure aging of other tissues and measure using different clocks, not just the Horvath or epigenetic clock.
We talked in an earlier episode about the proteomic clock.
There are a variety of clocks. There's glycan age, which are sugars that are attached to proteins that change over time. And there's one called immunoage. You measure various changes in the immune system. Altogether, these can be used to get a better picture of whether Greg's treatment is truly reversing aging or just some aspects of it.
But the really frustrating thing is, even with these clocks right now, we don't know what we don't know 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line. So it's a really good indicator if we can get these clocks to reset, if we can get these clocks to lower, like Greg did, at least in the short term. In the long term, do we have to wait for the long term?
Well, it depends. I know that Greg's research is ongoing, and I was with him a couple of months ago, and he told me that repeated treatments over more than a year actually reduce age based on this blood clock, even more so, and people are going back by a decade, apparently. So super interesting time. I would say the jury's still out whether this is truly reversing aging or just some aspects of blood aging. But it's a very interesting time that we live in where people are ostensibly going back in time.
One of the commonalities, I think, in almost all of these things that we've talked about today is there are these early indications that something might have effects, and people are jumping over one another to get to them. And, some people are going overseas. If they can't get it here, they're finding doctors willing to do this. They're, finding suppliers from wherever on the internet they can. And it's understandable, right? Because people are suddenly awakened to this idea that aging may not be something that we have to tolerate in the long term. So they're eager, but there's still work that needs to be done.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is remove bad habits.
You mentioned earlier sun damage. Staying out of the sun's really important. Smoking is really bad for your skin.
That's probably the fastest way to accelerate aging in your body, and it shows up on your skin. There's no question. You can even see the difference in people.
A lot of people don't know this, but alcohol also shown in research to be pretty bad for our skin. So if you don't need...
Right. I didn't know that. I only recently gave up alcohol, and having seen that study.
And sort of like along those same lines, smoking alcohol, bad food, eating processed foods, eating foods that are like rich in fats and chemicals and all that gross stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing how much your food can affect the aging of your body and your skin. And you can see the big difference. If you've ever had a pet and you change the diet of the dog, for example, we see this in our mice. We feed them good food and their skin and their hair changes radically.
And that's the important transition point there. The hair also changes as well. What's good for your skin generally is good for your hair too.
There's one thing that we've been ignoring for centuries. Modern medicine doesn't even think of it. And that is that aging itself is a medical condition. Aging is a disease. And as we've been talking about today, and we'll talk about in later episodes, it's increasingly a treatable medical condition. So why is that important? Well, the main problem with the way we do what I call whack-a-mole medicine right now is that you wait till you get sick, you go to the doctor, which is often too late, right? Especially when it's cancer. But even heart disease is hard to reverse currently. If you go to the doctor, they'll treat that specific disease and ignoring what got you there in the first place. And you end up having a healthier heart. We have pretty good drugs for blood pressure and heart disease. But that ignores the rest of the body. Our brain still gets old. And this is the worst nightmare for society. No wonder we're seeing an increase in dementias because we're not treating the whole body. But now that we understand that all parts of the body and essentially all diseases of old age are due to this same underlying process, we can find ways to halt, certainly slow down, halt, and reverse this process, not just in one part of the body, but in all tissues and organs, so that we can stay young, not just with our cardiovascular system, but our brains as well. And when we do that, that is true longevity. That can get us decades longer, healthier life.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome.
Do you see the top 10 we did on Dr. Jason Fung? See the video right there next to me? I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
If you remember the 80s and 90s, there's this huge movement against fat that, all fat is bad for you. It caused heart disease and all this sort of stuff, much of which is sort of